You're listening to a podcast of Conversations with Richard Fidler. For more information, visit abc.net.au/conversations. Conversations with Richard Fidler on ABC Local Radio.
Hello, good morning. Last month, more than 5,000 Australians showed up on the steps of the Sydney Opera House at dawn, and they took all their clothes off together. The American photographer Spencer Tunick was in town, and he likes to take photographs of large groups of people naked together in public places. The people who came along that morning were adults, old, young and middle-aged, people of every body type and background. The point of the photograph is obvious when you see it, all that soft human flesh in front of the cold hard lines of monumental architecture. Afterwards, many of the people who had disrobed said that they found the experience weird, liberating and fun, which brings me to today's guests, for whom being naked in the open is much more than a one-off thing. These are three people who are nudists or naturists, people who enjoy the comfort and freedom of being in their own skin as much as possible. And they all think that naturism is about a lot more than getting nude. James and Jan Bishop run a nudist retreat on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and they've been there for almost 30 years. James and Jan, hello to you both.
Good morning, Richard.
And Dario Weston's a musician and a photographer. He's also a Christian and one of the organisers of the annual World Nude Bike Ride. Hello, Dario.
Hello to you, Richard.
Is there any difference between nudist and naturist, Dario?
Depends who you ask. There's a joke that goes on in the naturist scene that nudists just like going around nude, but naturists like going around nude and giving lectures. As the term implies, naturism is about more than just being nude. It's about getting back to nature, getting back to the natural environment and your own nature as a person.
Yeah, James and Jan, I'll go to you now because you run this haven, you call it, not a retreat, on the Sunshine Coast, which you're surrounded by nature. Is being naked with nature a very big deal of what you do, Jan? Or I'd ask you then, James.
Yes, well, it blends in very well because the atmosphere that's created by nudists actually attracts nature. Like the bird wildlife is very friendly. They're wild, but yet they're tame. This morning I had birds landing in my head and over my hands as I just walked outside.
Is wildlife alienated by our clothes then, do you think?
It takes away the fear. There's no fear. And nature comes close to you, yeah, very close.
Jan, I suppose being naked altogether is a great equaliser with everyone there.
It balances people out. Very much so. When they come there, they feel like they're racing. I had somebody come in the other day and he just was racing at the desk, just keep racing, and I kept saying to him, slow down, you're here for 2 days. But he kept racing.
Going fast?
Yes.
What do you mean? Why?
Yes. Because out there, out here in this society, it's a fast lane. In our place, it's really slow down. So when they come in, we've got 10 kilometre speed limits, but you find that you've got to tell everyone to keep slowing down because they keep speeding, because outside they're speeding. So it actually takes them a few hours to unwind when they come in.
Is that it for you too, Dario, the unwinding, the slowing down of life?
Yes, because I tend to live a bit of a high-stressed lifestyle with my activities in Brisbane, and when I visit Jan and James's place, it's just really great, to just take stock of myself and slow down and just, be able to align my mind with their environment.
Jan, you say you live in utopia, don't you? You live in a kind of utopia.
Yes, we do.
Why? Why do you think of it that way?
Well, anybody that comes there, they'll all tell you the same thing. They ring me up on the phone and ask me about the place. But when they come in, they say, oh, we didn't think it was anything like this. They all say it's heaven on earth.
Do you feel the same way, James, about your place?
Well, it is, and it also points out that people had something else on their mind. And that's one of the things that's trained into us, and that's the thing that stops most people from being nudist is what's on their mind. There was never anything wrong with the body. The body's the best creation there ever was. So, but people form opinions, and those opinions eventually control them. And that's what they're overcoming, is just what's on their mind. And they feel better when they've done it.
Do you think people become more childlike in a way?
No, I don't know if they become childlike.
Or more innocent, I suppose. Or is that, have I got the wrong end of the stick there?
Well, what happens is the mind believes what's being used. And what happens is when children start off and they're dressed in, like, from nappies to clothes, and they might be told, oh, it's wrong, it's naughty, it's rude, it's crude, or whatever. It's all negative. And what happens, that child takes that on board and it backs it up with thoughts and words. Now, when that happens, and they go outside and they get older, and then they're faced with the law, and the law says, no, it's wrong. You know, so what's wrong about it? So everybody's got this wrong opinion, which is a negative thing in their mind, and they use it, and that controls them. So if they can face that and overcome that, then they've transformed their mind to a new understanding, which then frees them from that condition.
Do you agree, Dario? Is nudism a form of enlightenment?
I think depending on where you are with your life, I would agree with that, because I think there are some people, you know, who would benefit from it, and others whom I think wouldn't. Like, say, you know, if a man is having a, you know, an unhappy marriage with his wife and he wants to go there to look for another woman, well, I would definitely advise him against it, and believe me, I've had some calls about that myself.
Yeah, what kind of behaviour is unacceptable in your haven, Jan?
Unacceptable behaviour, well, we have a set of guidelines to go by. We give everybody their freedom of choice. But, like, if somebody comes in and they ask me, but what if this happens? And I'll say, well, just, you know, go and have a shower or lay down on your towel, put a towel around you, go for a walk, you know.
You're talking about.
I'm not saying it won't happen.
You're right. You're talking about if a young man, for example, becomes aroused by what he's seeing.
Yes.
So what do you do? I don't know, the old cold spoon trick or what? Or put a towel around you?
Well, it's natural for a thing to happen like that, you know. It isn't very, very natural. But once a person comes there, if they haven't been there before and they're totally new, they always have this fear problem when they ring me up on the phone, you know, and I spend sometimes a half an hour on the phone to people trying to explain to them that, you know, it's their fear. Nobody else is going to worry about looking at them because we're all the same. So finally they come in, and when they do, they think, oh, okay, where do I take my clothes off? And I said, well, you feel free to take them off whenever you want to. Just go down to the camping area, take your car down there, and just feel free to do it. A lot of people, they go down to the creek and they take the clothes off there first, then they walk back with their clothes in their hand, and then they're right.
So there needs to be a transition then, that walking back is what does it, do you think, in some way? They need to be alone to begin with, and then that walk back
Not everybody, not everyone, but there is a few. You know, there's a lot of people that are nudists out there in their own homes. There's thousands of them, but they're just not going to take that step.
So it's unusual what you do in the sense then, because you have to do a lot of hand-holding, I suppose, of people for the first time when they come to your place.
Well, I don't know. A lot of people call me Mother Mary sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people do ring up on the phone and they think that nudists can solve their problems, you know. It just seems to be something that happens. And it is very interesting. Like, I remember I had a phone call once from a young girl somewhere in Brisbane, and she read out a page of negatives to me, and I thought, how could all these...
Well, she rang up with a list of reasons why she shouldn't go to a nudist
all
place.
the problems with
right.
she could find about nudity, and I thought, gee, this poor girl. And
so what did you do? Did you go through them one by one with her?
I listened to her for a long time, and I said, look, we nudists don't have any of these problems. I said, how could you have so many problems? And she said that she was doing a school debate, and she went around the community and gathered their opinions.
Yeah.
So, unbeknownst to her, she's released a great secret, really, about people's feelings and the things that nudists haven't got. They've got over those things, and they're freed from that strife. But people that haven't got over those things, they're controlled by that thinking, and that thinking is real for them. It is real. There's nothing wrong with them as a person, but the character that in them controls them and makes them feel unsafe.
I agree with that. I've read the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and he talks about nudity quite a bit in the first and the third editions, and he says that fear can be seen as an acronym as false evidence appearing real.
False evidence appearing real. Now, for you, Dario, nudism is very much part of your religious faith too, isn't it? It's not a thing that lives outside of it. It's very much intertwined. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I've copped a lot of flack for being a Christian and a nudist, both by Christians and non-Christians alike, who've seen me as anything from a drug addict to a paedophile or to being a freak. But the thing is, the Bible is actually quite moot about nudism. The only time it doesn't admonish it is if you deprive somebody of clothes because they're cold, or if you try to get someone drunk in order to ogle at them naked. Then that's the only time that it's not acceptable in the Bible.
But you don't. But more than that, am I right in thinking that you don't see it as something that the Bible? It's not only something that the Bible says doesn't really have any prohibition against. You see it as being part and parcel of your faith too, don't you?
Yeah. Well, as they were saying before, it's like a form of enlightenment. And it's like, just, evolving with your, relationship with God and with nature alike. I see both of them as being intertwined.
There's, of course, the famous story, in the Garden of Eden where Eve eats from the tree of knowledge, and then Adam does as well, and then they both realise they're naked at that point. I don't know, what do you make of that story?
There's different translations of the word naked if you study ancient Hebrew or the Koine Greek words in which the Bible was originally written. There's different meanings for naked. One is innocence. One is the, oh God, I'm naked, what am I going to do? And then there's the nakedness which is to do with corruption.
Three naturists, nudists are my guest in conversation at the moment. Dario Weston, James and Jan Bishop. Just going back to what you'd actually do at your venue, what actually happens? Do people interact, or do they pretty much spend most of their time by themselves, Jan?
No, most people, they come there for peace and quiet. They mainly come on weekends, and they love to, gather around a campfire at night time. They maybe all share their food together and just have a chat. People might bring along a guitar and sing a song or something. I've even heard bongo drums in the distance. And people just really like to be friendly there, It's just, a lot of people get the wrong idea. They make the mistake and think that as soon as you say nudism, they say sex. And it's got nothing to do with sex whatsoever. It's just a way of life. It's a way of being. I remember when I first became a nudist, I was scared like crazy. But then, after a few days, I thought, it's me, I'm the problem, All these people, they're better than I am. Do you know, to be honest with you, I'm more nervous speaking now than what I am going nude.
Yeah. I think one thing I should debunk is the idea that nudists are all asexual, because we're not. We are sexual beings, and we do appreciate there times when being naked socially can be a sexual experience, but there's no need to go from that line of simple nudity to full-on sexual activity. And that's one of the main things that we are educating people about naturism.
But doesn't it have to be, it is associated with arousal though, isn't it?
I think on the first few visits, like, especially if you're like a teenage guy, which I was when I first got into it. And
you're only human, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm human, but I know when to see a nude body as being a sexual thing and when not to.
Does the sexual atmosphere kind of dissipate pretty quickly? I'm wondering if it's new to you, it's kind of, wow, I'm seeing these naked people all of a sudden, but then does it get normal very quickly?
Well, I've been to mass nude gatherings before, like the Clothes Optional Festival Confest and the nude beach carnivals up at Alexandra Bay in Noosa, which can attract anywhere between 500 to 5,000 people, and you don't see any of the guys, going around parading erections. That's sexual exhibitionism, and it is definitely frowned on by the naturist community just as much as the outside communities.
So what's your rules on do you have a rule on sexual activity at your place?
We don't condemn sex in any way. All we ask is if people come to camp at our place, if they can go to the caravans and tents and do whatever they want.
So just like anywhere else, just do it in private.
Exactly. Just imagine that you're anywhere with clothes on. Well, you do the same thing as our place, only you don't have your clothes on. We don't.
Nudity is just an extra thing that we can do that some people can't do. That's all it is, really.
Other than that, it's no different, really.
No different.
And I think that's what some people, find very liberating about nudism, especially women and younger people, who are initially apprehensive when they find out that, everyone just, interacts with each other the same as they would do, like, say, at a nightclub or like at a Lions Club or an RSL or whatever. Then they just relax and become more attuned to it as they go on.
Is it a problem, though, with do single guys show up expecting it to be a swingers retreat?
Often. I get phone calls all the time about that, and I'll just say to them, look, if you want that kind of thing, you'll have to go somewhere else, because they really do think that that's what they're coming there for, but it's not. We don't agree with swinging at all. Actually, on the bottom of our form that they sign when they come in, we've got definitely no swingers on the bottom of the form. But, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that there's no swingers there, because I don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
And you're not about to police that, no.
No, well, we're not policemen. When they come in there, they've got the freedom to be themselves. I don't walk around the place, and James doesn't walk around the place policing people at all, never.
What kind of people come along?
Oh, everything from...
All walks of life.
Yes.
Everybody comes along. Doesn't matter whether they're doctors, policemen, ambulance bearers, it doesn't matter. They're all there. Politicians. You can get just everybody. It's a broad spectrum.
In society, you walk outside and you go down the main street and you'll say, well, this fella's got a suit on. Maybe he's a lawyer or a doctor or someone. And when they come to our place, they take their clothes off. You wouldn't have any idea who they are.
Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of discretion here, because you could see how, for a politician or even a policeman, that could be a problematic thing.
We've actually had a couple of politicians showing support for nudism at various times, like the late Richard Jones, who campaigned for Reef Beach in Sydney, Kate Malloy, who tried, with Alexandria Bay, and there's also, I think, Bob Quinn, who was the Liberals leader for Robina, who wanted to see nudist beaches established on the Gold Coast.
So is there a kind of a tacit thing that everyone is who they are, and you don't talk about it afterwards, or how does that work?
No, we don't discuss people's private lives. That's a policy. If somebody comes in there and says, gee, and I don't want anyone to know who I am, I respect that. We respect everybody's identity.
James, there's so much, we have such a body-fixated culture in the world at large at the moment. What is nudism a kind of the ultimate form of that, or is it a haven from that, if you like, the culture of the body beautiful? Do people feel they need to be beautiful, physically beautiful?
Well, I don't know if it's about beauty. The body's perfect, whichever way you look at it. Like I say before, it's all a state of mind. There was nothing ever wrong with the body. And what happens is we form opinions, and those opinions control us. It's as simple as that. And what we hope, from a nudist point of view, is that we can help those people that are having a problem with nudity, because they don't need to have that problem. And we know they can change. And they're the only ones suffering that problem. And it's an individual and personal thing. So when people decide to face nudity, like me, for instance, when I first started off, I thought I was pretty well put together. I used to work in a government job, And one of my...
You're a fine-looking man, James. Can I make that observation of you, sir?
Well, some people say that I'm not too bad, you know. But anyhow...
Bit like Abraham Lincoln, don't you think?
Yeah, what happened when I first faced nudity, my friend said to me, oh, come on, we'll go to a nudist place. And I said, right, I can handle that, all right. So I went, and when I got there, I was really shaken, and I thought, what's wrong with me, you know? And then that's when my all my life started to come apart, and yet it started to come together, because I wanted to know why I was shaky and nervous and out of order at something shocking. And then I had to look at myself, and then I found the answers. And it's those answers that I try to help other people with, because I know that it was in me, I know I overcome it, and now I'm freed from it. And one of the most important things that you can find is freedom. And freedom is from the condition of mind.
But you're not free, are you? Because it's illegal and inappropriate, I suppose, to walk down the street.
Yes, but understanding that, so we can have compassion for those people that don't understand.
I might add, Richard, we don't go out much.
Well, actually, the way the laws are worded is that nudity is covered under the, pardon the pun, the Summary Offences Act and the Gaming and Vagrancy Act. And
the Gaming and Vagrancy Act.
Yeah. It covers the willful exposure laws, and willful exposure only pertains to the genitalia. The male genitalia is external and the female's is internal, so therefore it is actually technically legal for a woman to go nude in public and not get arrested. But if a guy was to do the same, then he would, unless he was wearing like a G-string.
That's shockingly unfair, isn't it, James? That's shocking.
It sounds a little bit that way, doesn't it?
Sounds a bit completely wrong. You know, what's wrong with us? Hey?
Nothing.
Do people come to your resort when they're recovering from illness, Jan?
Oh, yes, lots. Because there's peace and quiet there. You know, you can hear a pin drop. It's just, the only thing you hear is the birds.
I'm talking about people who have illnesses have left their body scarred or
scarred,
changed in
yes.
some way.
We have lots of people like that come in. And they ring me up first off and they say, look, I've got this big scar operation. I say, so's my husband, you know. Come and have a look at his body. He's got a big scar across his stomach too. It doesn't worry him. And I find too that a lot of bigger people come there because when they go to the beach, people stare at them. And when they come to our place, people don't stare because they're accepted. We have women that come there that's size 24. And, you know, and they're really comfortable. Very, very comfortable. And some of them have got battle scars everywhere, I can tell you. You know, but people just don't worry about that because you're accepted. This is the thing about nudism. You are accepted for what you are.
Yeah, it comes from the heart. You get to know the person not by their looks, but from their character, their personality, their gentleness and kindness and their softness, their way of communication.
So people come to you if they've reached a conclusion that they're sick of being unhappy in their skin, do you think?
No.
For whatever reason. No, not always, but sometimes if they've had an operation that leaves them feeling somewhat scarred or if they're overweight.
We've had people come in, that, you know, they've had their breast off. You know, they've only got one breast and it doesn't worry them. They're proud who they are and it doesn't worry them at all.
Have they sought you out because of that? I'm just wondering if they feel that that'll help them, you know, heal in their own minds.
Well, I think that when they ring me up and I talk to them, and they want to go somewhere where they're accepted, and if they go to a beach or something like that, people look at them strangely if they're marked, their bodies are marked or anything. But when they come to our place, people accept them fully for what they are. I've noticed this over years and years and years.
Are people relieved when they get to your place?
Oh, yes. Yes. They come in and they say, oh, gee, this is such a magic place, you know, this is beautiful. And I don't think there's one person that hasn't said that.
No, local authorities that come into the place, inspectors, like say council inspectors and that doing their job, they come in, they say, gee, this is a very peaceful place.
Did they get their gear off while they're there? I mean, surely that's appropriate, surely.
No, but they do
when
comment.
in Rome and all that, you know.
They do comment, though. They say that we have one of the cleanest parks they're simply amazed how clean our place is, you know, because we don't have any rubbish lying about. People are self-responsible. We've got one garbage bin, and they all take the garbage to that one bin, you know. They don't leave it lying around.
Yeah, that policy is also taken into the nude beaches as well. There's an etiquette guide that's published by the Free Beaches Australia, and it says, you know, you take home what you bring with you, you know. So if you bring like food and drinks and that, bring a big plastic bag with you and take it home, you know, because, you know, we've got to care for the earth. You know, we can't just leave garbage lying around.
We have people that come to our place with canoes, and because we've got a 2 kilometre creek front there, and they get into the creek with their canoes. They go up with plastic bags, and they pick the rubbish up out of the creek. You know,
That's fantastic.
That's
we have
our clean.
nude beach clean-up days as well on the 26th of January.
You're listening to Conversations with Richard Fidler on ABC Local Radio and the World Wide Web.
And today you're finding out about the world of nudism, naturism. With me are James and Jan Bishop, who run a nudist retreat on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. They've been there for almost 30 years. Dario Weston is here as well, a musician and a photographer and one of the organisers of the annual World Nude Bike Ride. Dario, I want to talk about how you began your experience with nudism. Where did it all start for you?
Well, I saw a documentary on BBC TV back in 1979 when I was 8 called Let's Go Naked, which is incidentally where Andy Lofthouse got the name of his band from as well.
Is that right?
Yes.
There you are.
Yeah, just asking.
Okay.
And it was about, people in the UK and Europe who were taking holidays in the city of Cap d'Agde, which is in the French Riviera, and they were doing stuff like shopping and just relaxing in the hotels and playing sports on the beaches all nude. And they were interviewed as to why they would go nude and why some of them wouldn't. And it was quite often the wives who seemed to be the most reluctant to do it, the British ones, but the European women had no trouble with it whatsoever.
Yeah, German people particularly are very comfortable with the whole idea. You know, you can walk. It's quite shocking. You walk down a city like Berlin or something and see people completely naked sunbathing on the River Spree there. That's kind of takes a bit of getting used to, but there you go.
Yeah, it's sort of changed a little bit now that the Berlin Wall has come down. The Eastern Germany was quite liberal, whereas West Germany was quite a conservative country. But in all, most of Europe is quite laid back and neutral about nudity. Then,
So watching that documentary, what happened to you watching that?
Well, this whole idea that children are uniformly shocked and offended and damaged by seeing nude people is completely erroneous. I mean, I found it was quite interesting and intriguing, that there were people who could live like that. And throughout my teenage years, I'd constantly been ruminating as to what it would be like to be in a nudist environment, and I finally took the plunge when I was 19 to go to a swim party in Brisbane, which is sadly no longer trading. And it took about 3 visits before I really adjusted to it, and since then I've decided to explore nudity in various forms, like going to clubs and beaches and festivals, and even with my art.
Yeah, you take me through that first visit too. I mean, you must have been scared. Were you scared out of your mind?
I wasn't so much scared, no, but I was just wondering, is this really for me? Is it not for me, or whatever? And then I finally just bit the bullet and got my gear off and jumped in the pool, which was thankfully heated. And within about half an hour, I just thought, well, everyone's just interacting here in a normal manner, so, what have I got to be afraid of with them?
After that experience, did you get a bit evangelical about nudism?
Well, I have been a regular contributor to Australian Sun and Health magazine, where I've written articles for them, and I also got the boot from a couple of churches that I was involved with, like the Catholic Church and the Assembly of God Church, when I tried doing essays about the interaction of Christianity and nudism for their youth groups. They thought that I was out to promote fornication and stuff like that, and they said, we don't want you in our church, get lost.
What was your argument that you were making in those essays?
The argument is that the Bible, does not admonish nudism, and there's a major difference between Christianity and churchianity.
Christianity and churchianity.
Yeah.
If you write that, did you write that in the article, I wonder?
No, I didn't. I didn't hear the term churchianity until a few years ago when I went to another church that a friend of mine's in.
It was a big step for you, though. I mean, you're coming from a reasonably conservative religious background, and you have this other idea which seems to exist. I mean, culturally it exists well outside of the church. You had a kind of big enough mind, I suppose, to try and incorporate the two.
Yeah, well, I'm not the only one to do so. There's a number of Christian nudist evangelists over in America. There's a few in the UK, and there's one who lives in Newcastle now called Pastor Rob Wright, who used to have nude Easter Vigil services at James and Jan's place, and we got a few home group meets together until he decided to relocate back to his hometown to start a family.
I think when I first spoke to you about 5 years ago, Dario, you were talking about your desire to actually have Christian services, nude Christian services. Did that ever happen? Could you ever do that?
Yes, it did happen at the retreat. We had stuff like praise and worship and Holy Communion and a couple of readings, and we got about 18 people, turn up for them, and it.
What was the atmosphere like during that?
It was really nice. There was just a whole sense of camaraderie because Rob was ministering to people of all different denominations, even non-Christians alike.
I suppose on the one hand you had to fight for tolerance within your Christian community for the idea of Nudism. How about the other way around? Was there a kind of scoffing at your religiosity, if you like, within the nudist community?
Well, there are some nudists who are very sceptical of Christians, but usually they just accept them and say, well, you're entitled to your spirituality or your religious beliefs. I'm entitled to mine. I don't believe, and let's just leave it at that. That's what their stance on it, and I respect them for that.
Jan, tell me about how you got involved. What was your first nudist experience?
Alexandra Bay. I went there, and it took me 3 days actually to take my clothes off.
Who took you there?
My ex-husband.
And did he tell you he was taking you to a...
Not really, no.
No? Had he told you he was a nudist before you got married?
No, he didn't. And he just wanted to go through the national park there for a walk, and I said, okay. And we came across Alexandra Bay, and he says, oh, do you want to go down? And I said, oh, you've got no clothes on. And he says, oh, that's all right. And I said, have you done this before? He says, yeah, I have. I said, oh, you didn't tell me. So he says, look,
Telling you now.
we can just sit here a little while, So I sat up on the rocks the first day. And the second day I thought, okay, I'll go back again and try. And the second day I sat up a little bit higher and I took my top off. And then the third day I thought, the fear's in me. I've got the problem. I was looking at these people on the beach and they were playing volleyball, interacting with one another. I couldn't see anybody doing anything wrong. And they just looked like people that had clothes on, like a normal beach.
Well, did you start to feel a bit silly with your clothes on?
Well, the third day I thought, this is it, I'm going down. So I quickly went down, I quickly put my towel down, took my clothes off, and just lay down on my stomach. I thought, I've got to get up and have a swim soon, I'm getting so hot, So I got up and got into the water and come back, and then I just sat on my towel and put my knees up, and just sat there and tried to cover myself a little bit. I just hadn't done it before, so it is a bit nerve-wracking. And then people were starting to come along saying, hello, nice day, and you wouldn't find this anywhere else. People were talking to me, and I've been on beaches before, and people just walk past you, they don't talk. But nudists do.
When you were sitting there still a bit frightened, what do you think you were frightened of?
Myself. Nobody else. I'm the one that was scared. It's like trying to talk to 1,000 people. So, I thought the problem's in me, it's not in them. They're accepting me for what I am. So then I thought, okay, I'm only one-to-one person here, so I've got to get used to this. Okay, so I thought, okay, this is good. Anyway, when I went back from the beach that day, the next day it was me that wanted to go to the beach. And so I went to the beach every day for 10 days, and that was the end of it. I was only 28 years old then, and I'm 64 now.
Was it hard to get you to leave?
Yes, it was.
So what was different? What was good?
Freedom. I think when you go into the water and have a swim, you don't come out with sand in your cosy or anything like that, you know, and that was really good. And I think it was acceptance of other people. Other people accept you more. You know, I'm not saying that other people don't accept other people in society, but I think Nudists, they do accept you.
You see, I think this is obviously a misconception, is the thought that would be in your head is that when you're completely naked, people are less likely to accept you unless you look great.
Well, there's no Angelina Jolies or Brad Pitts at our place, I can assure you. You know, so nobody looks 100% great, really. You know, you're just in your own skin, and people
But you say
accept
it's more accepting rather than less accepting.
Of course it is, yeah.
I think we also should be careful that the body acceptance mantra doesn't get too politically correct, because if you were to give like a young person a copy of a nudist magazine, they'll probably look through it and leaf through it for about 5 seconds and just chuck it over their shoulder saying, you know, boring, you know, there's nobody I want to see in there. And the original nudist movement in Germany, it started out based on health and diet and exercise and spirituality, and they were very respectful of their bodies. And the whole scene has changed since mid-60s, and a lot of people now associate nudism with hedonism and self-indulgence. And I think you know, if you accept your body, you've got to, you know, revere it and care for it as well. And especially if you want to get more younger people involved in nudism, you've got to have activities that appeal to them too.
Jan, tell me how you met James, your husband. How you met him?
Well, I was still married to my ex-husband at the time. He's since passed away, of course. And James, he was just there, and he gave me a helping hand along the way. And of course, I'm still there. 27 years later.
James, I wanted to ask you now your story. You became a Catholic deacon for a while initially. Tell me how then you came from that to starting up a nudist retreat. When did it all start for you?
Well, what happened was that, like I say, I was a farmer first, and I had a large property, and I found it was a pretty useless profession because you could grow food for thousands, but you couldn't make enough money to feed yourself. So I thought I've got to do something else. You know?
Oh, the irony of it all, yes.
Yeah, and my friend in my work, he suggested that nudists could use the property, and I said, yeah, fine, you can use it. So there was no problem with that. So I had to then look into it, because I had to accept nudity then. And when I say I had to accept it, I had to overcome my fears with nudity. So I was like an outsider looking in and watching carefully what went on. And I continued to learn. And at that time, I met an archbishop which actually helped me understand things a lot better. And it put a lot of light on the subject. And of course, I had to learn. He pointed me in the direction, and I had to do the work. So I looked into it.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, when you had a lot to learn about.
Well, it's about yourself. It's a personal thing. You find that all the answers are in yourself. There's no answers outside. Everything outside is like an illusion. It's not really real. You make it what you want to make it. And when you make it, whatever it is, you've got to make it good. So you can't let anything outside deceive you. And this is the real clothing that I think Dario would be talking about. It's the clothing of the mind. It's your understanding. It's your understanding that protects you in life. It's not outside things that protect you. It's your understanding.
Do you see it the same way, Dario?
Well, I do believe that you know, clothing is necessary for like protection and warmth. I mean, I don't think you know, we could live in a world where we're naked like 24/7 everywhere. Even though I do believe that public nudity ought to be the individual's choice, like it is as it's become recently in Spain and on the beaches in Denmark. Only 2 of them required people to actually be dressed. Especially with the World Naked Bike Ride, it's about, you know, proclaiming your own liberty and your own relationship to the planet. And I've been running it since 2007, which got 32 people the first year. Then subsequent ones weren't so well attended when I held them in the outer suburbs. It tends to be like mostly these young inner-city hipsters that tend to support them, and they've got no interest in going to nudist clubs.
Tell me the effect it has on people who are just walking down the street and suddenly a whole bunch of naked people on bicycles goes roaring past them. There must be this moment where you go, what?
Well, actually, the World Naked Bike Ride is a very well publicised event prior to it taking place. When I had it, I had all these people, standing on the side of the bike path. They were all clapping and chanting and cheering us. There was no bad behaviour, and there was no negative publicity. The only people who seemed to be unhappy with it to some degree were the police.
Well, that's it. Given that it is illegal for men, as we now discover, to be naked in public, do you get arrested, or what happens?
Well, I've never been arrested for being naked in public, but generally, if you've got a real spunky, independent spirit, you probably take it, to your local, federal member and take it to court. A friend of mine called Ken Wenzel, took his case to court when he got busted a few years ago for sunbaking nude out at the beach in Coolin, and the judge threw his case out in court, saying that he had nothing to convict Ken of regarding his character.
But I suppose the police just turn a blind eye to it then. I suppose you're not hanging around. That's the thing when you're on a bike. You're zooming from one place to the next.
Yeah, well, loitering basically is illegal regardless of whether you're dressed or undressed anyway.
How about protocol, Jan? When everything's in front of you, what's the protocol? What do you look at? Because, you sort of can't help but want to look at people's naked bodies.
Well, people tend to just look like I am now, looking at you eye-to-eye contact. I won't say that people don't look over other people's bodies, because that naturally happens.
I know, they're too interesting. Bodies are too interesting not to look at, aren't they?
Well, I make it a habit really just to have eye-to-eye contact with people, because I think that they feel more comfortable that way. Because if you're just standing there and you're looking over somebody's body, naturally they're going to feel uncomfortable. I notice if I stood there and somebody was looking all over me, I'd feel uncomfortable.
Well, I remember the last time I was on the show, we had a caller, Michael, who had been to a number of nudist camps himself, and he said, once people go in, they see what they want to see, there's nothing really left to see. You've got to then get to know what that person is like inside.
Yeah, that's right too.
Yeah.
People all pull together. They're all the same. They work together. They're just like an extended family. It's like at a work group. You're not staring at everybody's dress. You're getting on with life. You're doing things, and that's what happens. Yeah.
Part of us wants to be seen, though, don't we? Don't we want to be seen?
Well,
it's complicated, isn't it? You sort of don't want to be stared at, but you want to be seen.
I wouldn't really say that. No, I don't agree.
I don't think nudists are exhibitionists. They're not there.
No, I'm not even talking about exhibitionism. It's, I don't know. Like you say, someone will wear a nice dress, and it's not because they want to be stared at, but they do want to be seen in it.
Oh, everybody wants to be recognised, because really recognition is love, and we all want to be loved. So we all really like to be recognised. That's for sure. Yes.
I know some nudists who do stuff like, nude modelling and acting, and even, people who are musicians and filmmakers. So, yeah, there is also that visual aspect to nudity. There's a site called clothesfree.com in America, which is like the CNN News of Nudism. They sell all these news feeds on DVDs, about what's going on in the nudist scene in America and the Caribbean.
What's your best experience of nudism, Dario?
I think my best would have been at Confest, which is a clothing optional festival that's held every Christmas and Easter in southern New South Wales in Moolamine, which is a small colonial town. And virtually anything and everything's got the potential to go on there. They've got African drums, they've got group massage courses, they do workshops and everything free of charge. And if you're nude, you're nude. If you're not, you're not. You can go nude wherever you want.
Is it really clothing optional? Isn't after a while the expectation that you really should get your gear off?
No, the organisation that runs it, the Down to Earth Society, the committee goes nude when they greet people at the door, but they don't force anyone to get the gear off. And when there's less pressure on people to disrobe. They actually do it accordingly for their own will. Although most of the people that confess, they nude up in the arts village, or if they're using the creek or the massage tents or the sauna or the hot tub.
What do you see as wrong with the scene at the moment, Dario?
I think what is wrong is the fact that what we were talking about before, a lot of them tend to be closeted. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the gay and lesbian community and the pagan and Wiccan community who have created, pockets in society for themselves by using mediums like, the Village People and Fiona Horn and the Harry Potter novels to evangelize their way of life. The Nudists have not really done much. I mean, I'm working on a band myself called Laissez-Faire, which is a female-dominated band which addresses not just nudist issues but also societal and sexual issues which often prevent people from understanding nudism and naturism.
So what's the problem there? I'm not quite sure what it is. You think it hasn't spoken out well enough. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the very few people who's not afraid of telling all and sundry that I'm a nudist, and if they don't like it, well, that's their problem.
That's their problem.
That's the same as us. When we go to town, just about everybody knows who we are. And actually, we get a lot of respect. We walk into some places and, oh, hello, Jan and James. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bishop. And it's like, really, they treat us like somebody. Not that we're not nobody, but, we just get that sense of feeling that, they really respect us. Yeah.
Is Australia unusual in how few places there are that nudists can go to?
There's quite a lot of places in Australia that you can go to, there is magazines you can buy and it tells you of all the places. The ANF, which is on the internet, if anyone cares to get on the internet and look up the ANF, they'll find all the nudist venues that they can go to on that.
But beaches, I mean, there aren't very many beaches.
There's not very many beaches, no, and this is a bit of a problem, actually. I think the Queensland government should allow one beach, because there's people hiding on beaches just to go nude, okay? And there's nothing wrong with these people. They're not deviants, okay? They just want to go nude. But if the government allowed one beach in Queensland,
as there are in New South Wales and
yes,
Victoria and other states.
every other state in Australia has got a nude beach except Queensland, and confine it to that one beach, and I don't think they'd have any trouble at all. It's the government that's got the problem, not the people.
There are beaches in Queensland where people do go nude, like Alexandria Bay, the third bay in Coolin, but they're called unofficial beaches because they're not approved by the government. And I would actually like to see nude recreation allowed on all the beaches in Queensland, like they are in Germany and Denmark and Spain.
Is nudism mostly an older person's lifestyle? Are they tend to be?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
In this country, yes, but in the UK and Europe, there are a lot of young people going from their early teens to their late 30s who are very active with it. And
do you think it's because it's harder for younger people to dissociate sex with nudity?
Well, I don't think that's the thing at all. I think that younger people like the Gold Coast and the lively nightlife and all that sort of thing. We really don't have anything to offer much for the young people as far as bars and jukeboxes and poker machines and all that kind of thing. I think a lot of people tend to go to those places, whereas the older people come to our places. We've got people up to the age of 80, 85.
So is it just the absence of a disco that
well,
reason why you have?
Well, yes, it is. It is, because we have functions at our place, and when we have a function, we can have 100, 150 people there at any one time. They all seem to come in for a function, a live band, all that kind of thing.
5 years ago, they hosted a rock music festival called Raw at Caboolture, which they were trying to pitch to younger people, but they only got about probably 10 or 15 members of their target market, mainly because the guy who organised it, he refused entry to people under 18, he refused the use of cameras, and he refused single men to come along up until the last minute. So
you're a single man, Dario. Is that
I'm
difficult
single.
for you then to be a nudist and a single man?
No, I just, being the proactive guy I am, I just stay away from places that don't allow single guys. I've had girlfriends before that I've introduced to nudism, but they were like very rocky relationships, and I found that, I didn't really have too much in common with them after a time.
You mentioned exhibitionism before, James. Are exhibitionists discouraged? I mean, there's nothing really wrong with exhibitionism, I suppose, is there? I mean, are they discouraged
Well,
in your community?
I don't think there's anything wrong with exhibition.